Okay, welcome everyone to a special segment that we call the bloody bonus section. So
Bloody.
it is after hours. Oh jeez, I'm already slurring my speech. So cheers. It's really good to see you guys.
Likewise.
Little J&B for the road.
Thanks for stopping by, Jose. Before we jump into a couple topics that we're gonna go into, you and your wife just did a convention, didn't you?
Yeah. Something that's sort of 180 from Horror Geeks. We put on a kids Comic Con called KidCon in Pasadena. Fairly successful first year. We're looking forward to coming back in 2018. Our website is kid-con.com with K's. Check us out if you guys have kids and you want to make sure that they become geeks. KidCon is the place to be.
Yeah, I mean, geeks, horror geeks, sci-fi geeks, fantasy geeks, we're all part of one sort of.
I mean, we all became
group.
this way as children. I mean, that's
true.
why it's like that's why we love it, because we embraced it as children, and we grew with it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like we saw it when we were 20.
Yeah, or were we?
This is like us being Peter Pan. We want to stay in that spot.
We want to stay as children.
Or was it in our DNA? Does Lady Gaga apply to us like we were born this way?
She's probably a horror fan.
Baby, I was born this way. Well, she was in Horror Stories season 5, Hotel.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, that season I really didn't like. Like, Lady Gaga was the only thing that I liked about that season.
That's what I heard.
There should be another layer to the Patreon, like the super Patreons. Get to see Barry just do that whole album. Like,
yeah, I can lip sync Lady Gaga.
Just dancing and singing.
It may be worth it.
It's worth it.
Well, you guys did get to see my ridiculous Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Jessie dance recreation. But before we dive into some Friday the 13th talk, earlier we talked about Shudder. Jose, I'm trying to get everybody on board with this. Do you subscribe to Shudder yet?
I do. I just started. I mean, I've got Netflix and Hulu and stuff, but there's a lot of stuff on Shudder that's very interesting to me. I haven't actually watched, to be fair, a modern horror movie in a long time. I kind of like the state of the classics. However, Train to Busan, masterpiece.
That is good.
Did you finally see it?
It's a lot of fun, yeah.
Good, it was great, right?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, you got me to see it.
Yeah,
I loved it. I loved it.
Such a good movie.
So one of the things that Shudder specializes in, I was saying in the regular part of the episode, I just checked earlier today, and it seems like a few of them went off, like Vampires. I can't remember if Vampires Lesbos was on there before and now it's off, but it seemed like a couple titles went off, but they still have a really good selection of Eurotrash.
Yeah.
And for those of you who aren't familiar, like, with the term Eurotrash, Jose, do you want to clue us in?
Absolutely. Eurotrash, it's very simple. It is, it's not something that the Europeans would call their movies, but it's what we call their movies.
They call our stuff Ameritrash.
Yeah, we're Ameritrash, basically everything. Eurotrash is basically a term to describe really sleazy genre filmmaking, either horror, sex romps, kind of Hitchcock knockoffs. Some people would consider spaghetti westerns Eurotrash. I don't. I think some of them are even better than our westerns. But that's my opinion. So Eurotrash is basically this big umbrella for cheesy, sleazy, predominantly Italian
although a lot of Spanish
and
as well.
Spanish as well. Yes, yeah. Like Armando Osorio and The Blind Dead and things like that. He's Spanish. So I would, Spanish and Italian. It's a term sort of given to people or to films that fit a certain niche. When you see them, you know what they are. They usually have a lot of nudity, a lot of blood, nonsensical plots, and they try to ape American movies as much as possible. And because they fail, that's why they become so magical.
But there is, I mean, I'm not just saying this. Like, there is a style to that filmmaking, and I don't think it was purposeful, but it's sort of. I mean, maybe it was, though. Maybe it was a style that was common in Italy, Spain, like you were saying, mostly predominantly during that time. But it's a certain style of filmmaking where I feel like there's a lot of, like, sort of I'm trying to picture it in my head and describe it the best. But it's, like, not a lot of close-ups. There's a lot of, like, medium close-ups. There's a lot of kind of long establishing shots that a lot of times might pan or dolly across the landscape. And, of course, the film quality is just, that kind of film quality from that time.
Right.
And then there's also the music, which is very specific to that. But then also, definitely in Italy, and I feel like it was also the same in Spain at that time, the sound wasn't recorded live. Like, it was all ADR.
Yep.
So there's that kind of audio sort of signature to those movies as well. Like they sound completely different.
Well, it sounds like a radio show or something that's playing on film.
They would have Italian actors with American actors, with Spanish actors, with French actors, and everybody would be talking in their own language. So you watch the movie, and these actors just know, here's your script, here are your lines, this person is going to basically say this, and you just act like you hear what they say. So everyone's speaking in different dialects, and that's why it was so easy to dub, because they had to anyway.
Yeah.
And they knew it was an international type of a thing. So that's kind of the fun that you see Telly Savalas in a movie talking with the dude who is obviously not American.
Yes, Telly Savalas, Lisa and the Devil. I don't know if that's really considered Eurotrash. That might verge on the artistic a little bit. No, you think so?
Absolutely. Because it's Lisa and the Devil, and then it has another name.
Yeah, there was another. Really... I think it was something Exorcist. I think it was like the I think it was the Italian Exorcist.
I don't know. I think it was sleazier than that.
Let me
Maybe it wasn't Sexorcist, but there is a Sexorcist.
I gotta see that.
We need to track it down.
There is. It stars. Sorry, Mom. One of my favorite adult movie stars, Sophie D. Yes.
So is there I don't know what he's saying. Is there like a Godfather of the Eurotrash films? Is there like the penultimate?
Well, there's one guy. Sorry, Jose, you might want to take that up. But his name's Joe.
D'Amato.
Something like that. Yeah.
Well, Joe D'Amato is he did a lot of zombie movies. He did a lot of sex movies too. Most of them did a lot of sex movies. But then there's Jess Franco.
Now, when you say sex movies, do you mean porn, or do you mean a movie that's also sexy?
A lot of them also did porn.
Okay.
A lot of them did porn on the side, or some of their movies started out as porn, and they were released soft as horror movies.
With sexual undertones and overtones?
Vampire Lesbos, or...
Jean Rollin is the guy that I'm thinking of.
I love that guy.
Who did the nude vampire.
Dude, Jean Rollin is awesome, and he did a movie called Fascination, which is a masterpiece.
I love Fascination.
I love
and I have a huge crush on the blonde woman.
Yes! Oh man, now we're even better friends. She's a beautiful woman. That's a great movie. That's, I think...
Is that The Godfather?
I don't know if it's The Godfather, because he's very artsy. He also did a movie called Grapes of Death, which is a zombie movie. It's really good.
Grapes of Death?
Grapes of Death.
Like Grapes of Wrath with Death?
Brigitte LaHaye. Yeah, that's it. Oh, man, yeah. She's great in that. So start with Fascination. It's on Blu-ray, so I'm very happy to say I own that.
Now, one that I forgot about when we were talking about bizarre, and especially bizarre is sexual, is The Beast. With the whole freaking horse.
Oh, yeah.
Like, sex scene.
Valerian. I forget his name.
And then there's a part where the beast, like the woman, like her feet, like the monster's like holding her up, but her feet is like touching his penis, and then he ejaculates.
No, like, that movie goes all out. I mean, that is basically this woman gets raped by Bigfoot.
Huh? Which one is this?
And it's called The Beast. But
1975. It was on Netflix for a while.
Was it really?
And it seemed to me like it was uncut.
I saw it on Blu-ray. Like, that movie's just like, you see like sperm and stuff. I mean, that is as hard as it gets.
How do you see sperm? Like under a microscope kind of thing? Oh, that's the timer for the camera.
What a way to end the segment.
Okay, let's go.
How do you see sperm?
Like a microscope?
So let's use the adult film thing to transition from Eurotrash into Nightmare on Elm Street. Because as we know, or maybe some of us didn't know, but Wes Craven at one point admitted, this was in the Deep Throat documentary.
I didn't know this until you sent the email.
I think maybe this was done in 2005, but in the Deep Throat documentary, Wes Craven admitted that his early work, like before he did anything, was in adult film. And that he said that he directed many adult films, like hardcore porn, under pseudonyms. So, let's use that to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street.
To further piggyback on that, I know there's an Edward Penis Hands movie. Now, I know that has to do with Freddy, but I'm pretty sure there's a penis version of Freddy out there as well.
Freddy got
you guys know where it is. Send us clips.
His first film was Last House on the Left.
Yep.
And that movie was really nasty and gritty, and you can almost kind of see the influence, not from like porn per se, but you figure horror is kind of, in a way, pornographic in the sense that it takes the violence threshold to the brink, and it really pushes the envelope. And I feel like that was one of the first movies where I remember them saying that they really they could never make that now, like there was a real chainsaw and the scene, the fight at the end, they'll use a live chainsaw. Yeah. And I feel like there was a real nasty grittiness. I remember the last time I saw that movie, I just needed a shower when it was over.
That's an ugly movie.
It's ugly. Yeah. And they go there with the violence and the disgustingness. And they just bring that nast,
Well,
they bring the nast.
There's a visceral feeling to that movie and a lot of movies, like we were talking about the certain style that a lot of the Eurotrash movies had. Even like the American stuff, there's a dirtiness to that. I think some of it has to do with literally the film stock that they used then and the cameras that they shot on them, because
the grainy
it really literally looks dirty. And I mentioned in the regular part of the episode, and I really do, in my opinion, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the best American horror movie ever made. It's also one of my favorites, but it's a movie that I don't watch very often because it makes me feel dirty.
It's not a good time.
It's rough.
I mean, I feel unclean when I watch the movie, and that's part of the reason that I love it. But it's not something that I watch. Like shit, I'll watch Friday the 13th Part 2 once a month. Like,
you don't roll out of bed on a Saturday and pop.
I'll watch. I know some people hate Rob Zombie, but Devil's Rejects is one of my favorite movies. I watch that all the time, but for something that is literally one of my favorites and, in my opinion, the best horror movie ever, I don't watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And Last House on the Left kind of has that same feel. And it's not just because of the rape and the overt violence. It's just the way it
just leaves you feeling.
No, it's an ugly movie, and I think that works towards sort of the way the movie's interpreted by an audience. And I don't know how you guys feel, but I hate that those movies get released on Blu-ray.
I do too.
They don't need to look nice.
Yep.
I don't want to see them in 4K or whatever. They're supposed to look disgusting and beat up, and you found them in some dead man's basement. That's where they're supposed to come from. Not beautifully crisp and pristine.
I will never watch the restoration of Texas Chainsaw. Yeah, I will never watch the restoration of Phantasm. I won't watch the 4K restorations of those movies. I refuse to do it. Them out. Let's talk about Nightmare. So, Jose, was that a movie? I mean, I know that I'm a handful of years older than both of you, and I grew up, I remember when A Nightmare on Elm Street came out. Freddy was, we talked about this during the show, Freddy was a boogeyman. He was, my parents, or no parents that I knew, said, hey kids, be good or else Freddy Krueger is gonna come for you.
Really?
But we felt that way. We felt oh my God, there's this thing that can come at you through your dreams. And so I remember it very vividly when those movies came out. What's your earliest memory of Freddy Krueger?
I'm pretty sure my parents didn't give me any limits, and so for better or worse, I would watch, we would go to the video store and go, I want to see that. So I'm pretty sure the first one I saw was Dream Warriors, Freddy 3. A great movie, still one of my favorites. Probably, I think I like it better than the original, just because I love what they do with the Freddy concept and the characters taking control of themselves in the dream, all that stuff. So that's really, I think, where I feel I came into knowing Freddy Krueger, and then I'm pretty sure retroactively watched the other ones. But as much as I like Freddy, I've never been a huge Freddy guy. I've seen all the movies a dozen times, but they're not. I don't rewatch them. I don't find them as intriguing to me in terms of a concept. But I like him as a character. I think he's interesting. But I feel really part 3 is when we discovered who he was as a villain. And he started saying stuff and messing around.
That's, to me, that's an interesting point, and that is something that I think is really fertile grounds for conversation, because I keep referring back to the regular episode, but I brought up the point that it was in part 3 where Freddy became what we think of him as. I don't necessarily know that was a good direction, but it's the direction that it went, and so for better or worse, that's the way it went. But for me, Freddy is the 1984 version of Freddy, not the 1987 version of Freddy.
Gotcha.
That's like in my that's how I see Freddy. Like I see him more as the boogeyman type character instead of like the trickster type character.
Gotcha.
But
I think
that shows how old I am.
He's a trickster boogeyman. Yeah, no, I was telling Barry earlier that I said on the show that my first memory was the first one because my cousin was also a neighbor. She rode the same bus that I did, and she was a couple years older than me. And she's like, "Here's a copy of Nightmare on Elm Street." And I remember nice. I was in that age where I did not get full. I had many restrictions when it came to movies, rightfully so.
Now, was it when it was given to you? Was it something that you knew of?
Yeah.
Like, this is the Freddy Krueger thing.
Yeah, I think that was just such an iconic name already, and such an iconic franchise. And I do remember being like, "Oh, this is the good stuff. This is what my parents won't let me see," And I remember this was a different era where you would wait into a movie store and you would look at all the titles and you would see the covers and you would look at all the cover art and you would hold it in your hand and be like, "This is the one I want," And then there was all the different sizes and there was like Ghoulies, the guy in the toilet, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And so I would totally like judge what I wanted to watch from like, the sequels.
By the cover art.
And I was like, "Oh, I want to see this," and it was like Friday like 7, and then my dad's like, "You should probably start with 1," and I was like, "This is the one with the better cover." But I remember getting the very first one from my cousin and watching it over and over and over, and it terrified me. And that really became the one that I only recently went for other, just to get ready for today.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had seen a few of them. I'd seen 3. I thought I'd seen more of 2 than I did, and I really couldn't remember it.
So, Jose, would you agree with what Andy and I were saying earlier that essentially parts 3, 4, and 5 comprise their own trilogy?
Yeah, with the whole, what's her name? Patricia Arquette's character?
Kristen,
and then Alice, and yeah, they're definitely connected. So I would that makes sense. It's sort of their own little Tommy Jarvis saga.
I was thinking about that when we were talking earlier. It's like the Tommy Jarvis trilogy.
Yeah. It sucks that they killed Kristen off too soon, though, because I feel like that's kind of, even though it was a different actress in part 4.
It was, and I know a lot of people might disagree with this, but I enjoyed Tuesday Night's Kristen in part 4 better than Patricia Arquette's Kristen in part 3.
Well, I would argue that Kristen in part 4 is a different character just because she's gone through so much and survived.
It's true.
And in the third one, she's like a weak, scared girl. So I don't know. Patricia Arquette, should have done it.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's part of the reason that part 4 went the way that it did. But I really like part 4, and in many ways, I like part 4 better than part 3. Part 4 to me is really, really interesting because I just don't know of any movies that do this, especially in a series where like you start a new heroine like halfway through the movie.
Right.
Like it's not like the Kristen character dies in the splash sequence. Mm-hmm. It's not even that she dies at the end of Act 1. Like she dies at the midpoint of Act 2, and then we see the Alice character take off.
It's true. Most of the time, you start a new heroine or a new hero in a movie, and you kind of do pass the baton, and it's solidified throughout. And it harkens back to a little bit of Psycho, maybe with Janet Leigh. Like you're following this character, you think you're with this character, and then boom, and pivots. And also, it creates a sense that just no one's safe. Because I thought that too, and I really, really did like that about that, and. I particularly thought 3 going into 4 was really strong. And you know what? Even with the actor shift, I just thought it was really well done. And I liked what you said, how it was kind of a different character, so it kind of justifies the actress shift.
But I think, to your point about maybe it happened because of the recast, I think it smells, from just writing and knowing production, it smells like the studio goes, "Oh shit, let's just start fresh, kill her off somewhere." And because I don't know, it's an odd shift for a franchise that isn't known for taking huge kind of character risks. It's very odd.
Yeah.
But it works, and 4 is good. To a degree, I think 5 is very enjoyable. 6 is trash.
That's what I was saying earlier.
I still haven't seen that one. I gotta watch that one.
The video game sequence is one of the most atrocious things I have ever seen in a horror movie. Freddy's playing with the joystick and like the kids bouncing up and down in the house. Yes, and he actually does make a reference to Power Glove. He's like, "Oh, I got the Power Glove."
Yeah.
I mean, he does wear a glove so that's a little bit.
Well, that's why. It's
kind of kind of fun.
But I think that's when they jumped.
Yeah, but I think it's actually on his same hand that the glove is on, and there's like this little video game controller. Actually, it's not even a video game controller. It's like a bad mini computer
interface. It's like a motherboard or some stupid shit.
Exactly.
We should coin the phrase "jump the Power Glove" as like the horror jump the shark.
The power glove.
Like if the movie becomes too ridiculous and too campy and too out of control, they really jumped the freaking Power Glove that time, boys.
Yeah.
Just like Freddy 6.
Let's start a glossary of terms. I think that's
Horror Geek Dictionary. Yeah, that's cool.
Hey,
but let's get back to the Alice, who really just she
Lisa Wilcox is amazing, and another bit of what a lot of people will consider heresy. Like, I actually enjoy Alice in many ways more than I enjoy Nancy.
Burn him!
And I love Heather Langenkamp. I really like what she did, but I actually think that Lisa Wilcox's like portrayal of the character, I feel like Alice is a deeper character.
Right.
I feel like Lisa Wilcox portrayed a much deeper character. I really like.
I love the stuff with the baby and the control of the baby, and it really got into like the kind of abortion.
Yeah, when the baby's dreaming.
Right. Yeah, and then also like when the boyfriend's parents come for the baby, they're like, well, we should raise him. You're crazy, you know. And she's like, it's my baby. And I actually thought that was a really powerful. And then the father gets on her side. Her father really has to kind of like, you know, his loyalty was still kind of questionable, where he was gonna go, but that actually became kind of the emotional nougat for me there.
Yeah,
for me, piece. 4 and 5 are what part 1 and 2 wanted to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because 4 is really the definitive Nightmare on Elm Street in a way, because you got the girl, you got the people, and they're fighting Freddy. The first one is sort of the prototypical, what is this Freddy? But by 4, we have who Freddy is, he has been embraced by the culture and the people making it. Well, this is the Freddy we have now. So 4 is really restarting the franchise, and in a way, Kristen is Tina, you know, from the original one. She dies, and then Alice takes up the mantle, like Nancy did. So 4 and 5 are really, to me, the perfect 1 and 2
passing the baton
of what it should have been in terms of defining the series. And then part 6 takes the shit on it.
I really want to see 6.
That's Freddy's kid or some shit. And,
it's so bad. Yeah, Lisa Zane, who is really attractive as the daughter, as
daughter or sister.
I think it's a sister. I'm sorry, as the doctor, and then she also becomes the daughter.
Yeah.
But you guys, I'm really sad to say, but it's about time that we
also killed our drinks. So there's that.
We did.
A little bit left.
And we can't do this sober. So
you didn't pay for us to be sober.
That's true. It's in our contracts to be wasted constantly.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to be doing this every week until the show gets picked up. And who knows, maybe even we'll just keep doing this because it's fun. Hanging out. Talking horror movies. Sweating profusely under hot lights.
With your money, we will be able to afford air conditioners to help us survive and not look like we're on the set of Waterworld.
All right,
we sacrifice for our art, but only to a degree.
Yes, and so thank you so much, everyone. Remember to watch horror movies and remember to stay geeky.